Good morning, everyone. We'll call the March 5th, 2013 meeting of Jackson City Council to order and ask Councilman Harvey Buchanan if he'll lead us in an invocation and prayer. If you would, please rise.
Good morning. Good morning. Let us petition God's throne of grace. This morning, our most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you, first of all, thanking you for the many blessings that you have so richly bestowed upon us. Yes. We pray, Father, that you will continue to bless us and keep us in your keeping. And Father, we have acknowledged this morning that we have sinned against thee. Yeah. And we ask you to forgive us of our many sins. Now, Father, as we move toward the Easter season, let us not forget that you took on the price and you paid the price, that you died for us and you rose again with all power in your hand. Father, this morning's council meeting, as we deliberate and discuss the issues concerning the city of Jackson, grant us wisdom, courage, knowledge, and conviction for the citizens of Jackson, Tennessee. Go with us, stand by us, and thank you for everything. We ask it all in the marvelous, magnificent name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nita, if you will, on the roll call, show Councilman Johnny Dodd is not right. He may arrive a little bit later. Item 4 is approval of the minutes of February 5th, 2013 City Council meeting. If there are no objections, any corrections or additions, we'll approve those minutes as submitted by Anita. Item 5 is the invitation for public comment. If there's anyone here who would like to be heard on any item under new business, if you'd let it be known at that time, we'll be happy to call on you. We have no proclamations this morning, no first readings. If council will be good enough, there's no objection. If you all would delete item 6 and item 8 under new business. Item 6 is we're still awaiting a map from the district attorney's proposal to change those judicial districts. And we may put that one back on the agenda once that map is received. And we're asking our Ferguson group under item 8 to submit back to us a potential contract for per issue that we're asking them to assist us in rather than a full year's contract. So both of those will probably be back on the agenda. Item 8 is second readings. Consideration of the ordinance to rezone property located at the northwest corner of Lexington Avenue and U.S. Highway 70 from RG1 F8 General Residential Flood Hazard District to RG2 F8 General Residential Flood Hazard District and containing 30.5 acres, more or less, submitted by William Clemens. Council approved that on first reading. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 9 is new business. First item is presentation on tourism and current efforts. Convention and Visitors Bureau by our director, Lori Nunnery. Council will remember that the Convention and Visitors Bureau is funded through CEDC, which receives a portion of the hotel motel tax. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning.
As the Mayor said, my name is Lori Nunnery, and I'm the Executive Director of the Jackson Convention and Visitors Bureau. And the first thing I'd like to do is thank you for my job. I have had the privilege for the last 3.5 years of going out and telling the world just how great Jackson is, trying to encourage people to come here, and it's been a great experience. And we have so much to be proud of in our community, and I just want to thank you for this opportunity. We are the local destination management organization for the city and the county. And basically what that means is we are going out and we are sharing with visitors, whether they're national or international visitors, about our community and the assets that we have. We also, because of the size of Jackson, have the opportunity to tell about the region here because many of our regional partners in West Tennessee lack a Convention and Visitors Bureau like ourselves. So not only are we talking about Jackson and Madison County, but we're talking about West Tennessee. And that's very important because in Jackson we have a lot of great assets, but we don't have one main drawing one. And we figure that the strength of what we are offering to those visitors and those people coming to our region is more on a regional basis. There's only so much that you can do in Memphis or Nashville, and then you're ready to get outside and experience the country life or the rural side. And so we try to offer that to our visitors. When you look at the Madison County Convention and Visitors Bureau, we have 3 goals, and let me read these to you briefly. One is that we seek to positively impact the local economy by increasing travel-related spending in the county. We provide quality services to the visitor and the local hospitality industry, and we assist in the development, preservation, and expansion of the county, region, and state tourism products. We find that it's very important for us to align ourselves with the state of Tennessee in their marketing efforts. Many of you may be familiar with Governor Haslam at the recent State of Tennessee address that he was trying to allocate an additional $8 million to market tourism in Tennessee. We have a lot of great things to offer across the state, and he recognizes the value of this economic development tool, and so we are helping to support that initiative across the state. Tourism, though, here in Jackson and Madison County is very important. It's important because of our visitors coming to the community, they serve over $1,000 annually on their taxes. If those visitors go away, their taxes go up. Our visitors are coming in. Last year alone, the collection of hotel motel taxes was over $1.3 million. And that's a considerable size for our effort. We have over 25 hotels in our county, and we're very appreciative of all the work that they do in sustaining our economy. One of the things that I think you'll find interesting is with all of the current economic conditions, in 2010 and 2011 were actually record years for tourism in Madison County. So while other communities were struggling with the collection of taxes or they were having challenges within specific industries, tourism held strong here in Madison County, and it continues to be stable over the last few years. If you're looking at 2011 and 12, 2012 was pretty flat to 2011, but it's still a strong industry. And we can attribute some of that strength is that we have a good business travel coming during the week. But what I would like to attribute a great deal of our growth and stability is to the Sportsplex. Many people, it's interesting when I go out and talk to the public and talk about tourism, the expectation of the Sportsplex and what it's doing. And you can look back at those hotel motel taxes and see the difference that it's made over the past 6-7 years. It is continually seeing growth, and I want to applaud Ricky and his team out there for the efforts that they are doing. They're just not staying stagnant at one area or at one level, but they are continuing to grow their product out there, and I applaud them for that. I also appreciate the opportunity for us to collaborate on projects to help market the Sportsplex in different ways. They have been very open to these ideas, and I appreciate that. It's funny, when I do talk to the groups, I always say to them that the Sportsplex is a good thing, and I make the group repeat it with me because it is such a good thing for our community. Not only does it attract visitors to our community, but then it provides many services locally to the residents of our community. Our taxes, we are funded, as the mayor said, through the hotel motel tax, which is a 5% fee that's assessed to visitors coming to our community. Out of that money that's collected, 40% goes to the city's general fund, 40% goes to the county's general fund, and we operate off of 20%. On an annual basis, we are capped at $193,000, with the rest of that money being generated going to underwrite the Sportsplex debt, and we're okay with that. I would sure like to have some of that money, but I am proud that it's making a difference in getting that new asset taken care of financially. When we cap in 2016, I believe it is, that money we are hoping will be reverted back to tourism and concentrated on a marketing campaign. Right now, we spend about $60,000 on an annual basis to market Jackson and Madison County, and that compared to cities of our size is considerably less. And please don't mistake this for complaining. I'm not complaining. I'm very thankful for what we have. But if we're going to compete on a national level and against competitor markets, we're going to have to look at different ways to do this. We are being very innovative with our social marketing campaign and the recent branding campaign that was launched last year in combination with the city and the chamber. But we need to do bigger and better things. And why that is so important right now is on a national level, Brand USA has been launched. That is a national initiative to market the United States outside of our borders. That has not been done historically. It is funded through a fee that's assessed to international visitors coming in. It is creating a pot of money. And the way it is working right now, if you can put dollars up to match money, you can do international marketing by marketing with Brand USA. So it's very important that we position ourselves that way with Memphis and Nashville and all that's going on with those communities music-wise. Now is the time. The season is ripe, and we have to really make sure that we're in line with what's going on. So it's very important for us here in Jackson to figure out a way to market our music products. We're not telling the story of our music products, and that's something that we're going to have to concentrate on, and we have been for the last 2 years, and hopefully we'll be able to come online in the next 2 to 3 years with a new product to make sure that people understand how rich the music heritage is of this area. A couple things that I would like to close with. I would like to thank Councilman Rahm. He serves as the council's liaison to the Community Economic Development Commission, and we appreciate his service with that. I'd also like to thank Mayor Gist. Recently, we had the opportunity to travel with Mayor Harris to Nashville to meet with Governor Haslam to talk about his plans for tourism. I have the honor of serving on the governor's task force for tourism, and to be able to sit with peers from across the state and talk about tourism, look at how they're doing it in the larger cities, looking at best practices. You know, it's not every day that you have the opportunity to sit beside of Colin Reed from Gaylord or Jack Soden from Elvis Presley Enterprises and learn from their experience. So it has been a great experience. We've taken what we've been learning from the task force and applying it to our principals here, how we're marketing, where our emphasis is placed. Our model, tourism-wise, has completely shifted over the last few years from being a print publication that you just kind of shoot out in the dark to very targeted marketing campaign, going for people that are interested in learning more. So it's been a great experience to serve on the task force. That has been about a 1.5-year commitment, and right now we are working on a strategic plan for if we are fortunate enough to be given the $8 million or some representative thereof, we would take that money and put it in a strategic campaign that would market Tennessee, not just to our border states, but those markets beyond our border states. If you just look at Michigan alone, what they've done with the Pure Michigan campaign, that was an increase. I think their total budget's over $22 million. That's a statewide campaign that the governor saw in Michigan that needed to happen. In Tennessee, we allocate about $14 million to tourism. And so to have this additional $8 million would put us on almost a level playing field with Michigan. And we have a lot more to offer here in Tennessee. If you've ever been to Michigan, it's a little bit colder. There's not quite as much to do. And I think here in Tennessee, with the great offerings that we have, from the Great Smokies to what's going on in Nashville with music, to down through West Tennessee, to what's going on in Beale Street and Memphis and with the music heritage, there's a great deal of offerings. We found through our research on the task force that people have a very positive perception of Tennessee. They want to go there, but they just haven't gotten there yet. And so what we've got to do is create a compelling reason for people to come to Tennessee and visit. And if Nashville and Memphis and the Smokies benefit, we as a state, and here especially in Jackson and Madison County, also benefit for it. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to have this job. It has been a great experience, a great learning experience, and I feel that I've represented Jackson well. And I would offer to answer any questions that you have to further expound upon tourism or other great projects that we're working on. You said I had 3 hours to speak, right? Okay.
Thank you, Laura. Any questions from council? I just have one that's, being a fan of benchmarking, where is Jackson, Madison County as a priority, and what other cities and counties are doing?
Sure. If you compare Jackson, Madison County, we ranked between 11th and 12th in all of the financial criteria. We have a very strong product, but as far as a particular draw, I think we have to capitalize on that I-40 corridor better. And one of the things we did this year is we are purchasing actually billboards out there, along with our mobile apps and our website to help draw people off of Interstate 40, because we do have that tracking there. But we do rank 11th and 12th in the state. Our closest competitor is about 20 million ahead of us. I think that, with continued growth in here and the development of a few more products, we can change those numbers.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, what do you feel is our biggest obstacle for attracting tourism?
We have the hotel room base. larger so than many communities. I think we have a challenge convention center-wise. When most communities have a convention center, it's attached to a hotel so you're not driving and going back and forth. I think that is a challenge that holds us back a little bit. I think also having a larger attraction that people come for. You know, we are very fortunate to have a very, very diverse products throughout the region. So people are coming to Shiloh, or bus groups are going to the Old Country Store, or they're hitting Parker's Crossroads, or they're hitting Denmark and sites like that. I think attractions, we need to look at how we develop attractions. I think the other thing that we really have to seriously look at right now is wayfinding signage and how to make that not only for our guests, but for the international visitors that come through. Just last week, we had about 14 visitors come through that was part of a familiarity tour that we were bringing them to tell them about Jackson, because we are a great destination. If they don't want to be in the larger cities, they feel comfortable in a smaller community, and we have a great price point here. We can get them in. And they were very attracted to Jackson and the hospitality. I think it's making it convenient and easy for them to find what they need to find. So I think a comprehensive signage package that's very clear and easily readable will be very important for us, especially when you have what's happening in Nashville and Memphis. Because if you've ever been to a community and not been able to find what you're looking for, the frustration, you just get back on the road and you go. And so I think that's one of the things, along with the asset development. And being able to spread that word out there through marketing. You know, we can only reach so much currently.
Mayor, I have a question, if I may. Good morning.
Good morning.
You gave several statistics. How do you quantify the numbers that you quoted?
That's actually provided to us from the U.S. Travel Association, and then it's released by the state of Tennessee.
Okay.
So it shows, they take the SIC codes, and then they pull those out of the numbers that are coming in. The hotel motel tax numbers are a report that we get from the county
Sure.
clerks, so.
Right. But you mentioned business travelers and
Mm-hmm.
tourists. They're two separate groups. How do you separate that?
We look a lot of that at the hotels, who's staying at the hotels and the timing of it. Most of the hotels track that. We also have Smith Travel Reports that's out of Middle Tennessee that provides a breakdown of leisure travels as compared to business travel. And historically, if you look at our numbers before the Sportsplex came online, you could see that the strength was during the week, that business travel, and then on the weekends, the hotels emptied out.
Do you have a staff?
No, I'm a one-person operation.
One-person operation.
Yes, sir. We are housed at the chamber. We actually rent space there, but we are a one-person office.
And relative to the convention business,
Mm-hmm.
which is our challenge, as you said, and as Councilman mentioned, what is the, I guess, cutoff point? What's the smallest convention that we can house here? Or maybe I need to reverse it. What's the largest?
The largest,
That we could handle? I guess?
well, you know, the Civic Center is very flexible in what they do. It's the lacking of that connectivity to a hotel where people just get out of their room and walk over. You know, with the assets that we have, we can accommodate larger groups, probably 300, 400, 500 in size. That means that their meetings would have to be at the Civic Center, so we would have to provide busing for them.
Right.
For smaller groups, I would say if we were taking it straightly hotel-based, I think a group of 200 to 300 would be the max.
And that's very rare.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
In your comments earlier, you mentioned a tax that's going to expire in 2016. Which one were you referring to?
It's not a tax. What happened is and you'll have to forgive me if I don't get all the terminology exactly right, but when they created the Sportsplex, our organization was capped at $193,000. They took like the average of several years of the taxes that we had for our office. The additional funds that come in from that hotel motel tax where we are funded go to underwrite the Sportsplex debt.
Okay. So you're talking about the hotel motel tax?
Yes, sir.
It's helping fund the sportsplex?
It
When
is.
that expires, okay.
Yes, sir.
You went so fast, I didn't catch that.
I'm sorry. He told me to.
Laura, if you don't mind, keep your seat. Billy King is here. Billy, you want to come up and take just a couple of minutes, 3 minutes, and tell them what you have planned at the Carnegie Center? Council will note the agenda. There is a budget amendment for some additional heating and air at the Carnegie Center for Arts and History. And Billy, have a seat.
I was thinking, as Laura was talking, you know, people who are in business, there's three things you have to remember. Number one is the location of the business. Number two is the location of the business. And number three is the location of the business. In Jackson and Madison County, right now, our main objective is music, music, music. Because that's really identifies us and identifies the corridor, actually. And I was thinking, we just recently moved the Tina Turner School, of course, to the Heritage Center in Brownsville. It has tripled their business at that center. And matter of fact, this year, they will have somewhere close to 22,000 people who will come off the highway at Brownsville, literally to see that school. Sleepy John's house is there, and they have a music museum there, a very excellent one. And Tina Turner is already involved in that. As a matter of fact, she sent her secretary 2 weeks ago to visit there. We're already pulling her toward the Carnegie also because Tina grew up in this area. We did a research, Laura and I did. There are 47 national musicians that have some connection with Jackson, Tennessee, that we could trace and find them exactly. If you go into TGI Fridays, and we just found this, Jimi Hendrix is standing in a portrait, but what he's holding is an album in his hand, and on the side of the album it says Sonny Boy Williams. Well, Sonny Boy Williams is buried out here on the Blair's Chapel Road, exactly. And so I made contact with Hendrix's people this week just telling that, because I thought that was so unusual that they would do that. We're looking at putting a music museum in the Carnegie, and it is a perfect tenure for that because it has a great little auditorium already there, thanks to the mayor, actually. And it is a perfect spot for that. We're hoping that we can hook to Graceland, which we've already had some contact with them, and also, of course, with the Heritage Center at Brownsville, and then a Nashville facility also. So it will pull that traffic off. That center, the Carnegie Center, is doing much better. We put a Civil War museum in there already. We spent almost $50,000 to do that. If you want to see every battle that's been fought in West Tennessee in the Civil War, you can go to the Carnegie now. It is the only place in Tennessee that concentrates on an entire section. So that's where we are, and that's what we're doing. Of course, Denmark is the main place of West Tennessee. We all know that. Everything starts in Denmark. Any questions?
I knew you'd get that in,
but
buddy. It should have been the county seat of Madison County, really.
Oh, yes,
right?
sir, and we
I
really
understand.
still consider ourselves as the
I
county
understand,
seat.
yeah, I understand.
Our population is growing. We're up to 11 now. And so,
Okay, any questions from council to Billy and the potential for the Music Museum and the Confederate exhibit at Carnegie? Okay, thank both of you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Item 2 is consideration of resolution naming the Ned R. McWhorter West Tennessee Cultural Arts Center Advisory Board. And you all have the resolution along with some proposed bylaws for that advisory. So is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have a motion, is there a second? Second. Discussion?
One question on that, Mayor. On the Article 4, it refers to a director, secretary to the director. In Article 8, it refers to an administrator. Is that the same person?
One and the same, that would be city staff.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's say we have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? Council, please vote.
And the motion is unanimous.
Item 3 is consideration of a resolution approving an amendment to the Consolidated Plan 2010-2015 to include analysis of impediment study 2013. And Dave, I assume that's you.
Good morning.
Morning.
First, a little background. We've always had an analysis of impediment study as part of the community development program because it's required. Our last one was completed back in 2000, and HUD said it's time to create a new one. And so we put out an RFP to hire a consultant, an independent consultant, to prepare the analysis of impediments study 2013. We selected J-Quad Group out of Dallas, Texas, who had extensive experience with fair housing programs and as well as an analysis. It's a 132-page report. Forgive me for not giving each of you a copy. But it will be available in the mayor's office, the final draft, and once y'all approve, we will print up or have the consultant print up the final document. What it amounts to is there's a large amount in this document that we have to do an analysis of these impediments using a lot of fair housing data, financial data, community reinvestment data, which they did an excellent job. And in section 6 of this study are the impediments that they found. And I have a synopsis of these in this implementation matrix because it's not just left up to local government to address these impediments to fair housing in our community. It's also up to the lending community, and there's a lot of socio-economic data that nonprofits can address and so forth. And we will address these impediments over the next 5 years. And it will be reported in our annual action plan annually. To go through this matrix real quickly here, one of the impediments is found that there was an impact of increased foreclosures, rising unemployment rates, and subprime mortgage lending, which none of us should be surprised at. And so support for that remedial, and they break them down to impediments and a remedial action that we can take. And for instance, on this one, support initiatives that help reduce mortgage defaults and foreclosure rates among low and moderate income home buyers. And I don't know where HUD missed the ballpark at fair housing. We've been doing that. We have a program at Jackson Housing Authority that exactly addresses foreclosures in the community and how to keep those from homeowners from losing their home. But there's all sorts of different actions we can take. I've talked to the lending institutions, and when they were here having a community meeting, the lending institutions in Jackson were extremely helpful and willing to participate in anything we needed to do. I've had First State Bank already offer to host one of the meetings with the lending institutions. So first off, we can find out what each of them are doing to address some of these impediments so we can address it in our fair housing, our annual action plan and annual report. Another one is there's a lower number of loans and applications and lower origination rates for minority applicants. And one of the problems they identified was the condition of housing. It's hard to get a loan to rehab a house that's not valued at what the rehab costs are. In community development, for example, we use a ratio of 1.2 as a break-off point. If we can't rehab a house that's at 120% of its value, then it's most likely not suitable for occupancy. And unfortunately, a lot of these are already occupied. So our programs address that. And another one is to update lenders on the AI study, which I just briefly explained. And another one was to create a certain education program. In Memphis, they have a program called Grizzly Academy. The Memphis Grizzlies have underwritten this program, and we're looking at that program now, going into the high schools and possibly other areas such as GED programs, middle schools, and so forth, on education on budgeting, how to buy your first car, how to buy your first house, what do you need to do when you get a credit card, and so forth. And there are other programs that are available here in the community that we need to bring together. I think one of our problems is these programs are all scattered, and we need to bring them into a focus. And so we will be addressing those, and of course, Community Development Office is in charge of coordinating and communicating a lot of these impediments. With that in mind, it'd be easier for me to open up to questions because it's such an extensive document.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Any questions from council as to the resolution?
No question, Mr. Chairman, but just a comment. Mr. Ralston, when you say that they're scattered with respect to the blending and blading of funds, I have been an advocate for all the different housing entities to get together so we can do something about the housing that we have, the dilapidated housing. Hopefully that can be done in the near future.
I need you to write your Congress. I'll give you just an update. Instead of an 8.2% decrease in CDBG funds this year, it's my understanding that the president has moved some dollars out of Medicare to help across the board, and that we're looking at possibly a 5% decrease in all funding.
So it is imperative that these entities, these housing entities get together.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments from council? If not, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Have
Second.
a motion, a second. Discussion from council. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Item 4, new business, consideration of resolution for support of Medicaid expansion. And Mr. Arnold is here to answer any questions. And morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Councilman. Thank you for the time this morning. The state of Tennessee has a very important decision that's pending with the state right now regarding the expansion of the Medicaid program here in our state. This has the potential to have a favorable impact, or unfortunately a negative impact, depending on which way the state goes on this. On our local hospital, our local health system, our local economy, as well as really hospitals and the state economy across the state. Just a little quick background information. One of the most important provisions of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, which was passed back in 2010, was the extension of coverage to the uninsured in this country. That really is accomplished by two ways. One is you have heard about the insurance exchanges, which will take effect in January of 2014, and that's not optional for states. But the second one is the expansion of the state Medicaid programs. You may recall the Supreme Court decision last year ruled that that part of the Affordable Care Act was optional for states. States can elect to expand the Medicaid program or not expand the Medicaid program. And essentially the way that it works is that for the first 3 years of the cost of expanding the program, and by the way, the way the program is expanded, the eligibility limits are raised to 138% of the federal poverty level. And the way it works, the first 3 years, the federal government pays 100% of that cost. In years 4, 5, and 6, that's tapered down, and in year 7 forward, the federal government pays 90% of the cost of expanding the program. Just as a reference for you now, currently the federal government pays about 2/3 of the cost of the state Medicaid program today. I'll speak to just three quick points on this issue. One, it's important that we all remember that the clinical outcomes and the cost of the care of the uninsured in our community is just as important as the clinical outcomes and the cost of the care of an insured patient or a Medicare patient. And it's also important to remember that the uninsured in our community, and currently at Jackson General, our business is about 10% uninsured currently. The cost of that care is already deeply embedded in the cost of our healthcare system. It's just shifted to commercial insurance payers. Healthcare professionals, clinical professionals will tell you that the clinical outcomes of the uninsured can be improved, and equally important, the cost of that care to the uninsured, which is already in our system, can be better managed if uninsured people in our community have access to a health program like the Medicaid program. That's point number one. Number two, our hospital here in Jackson, as well as hospitals across this country. About 2 years ago, our Medicare payments began to be reduced 2 years ago, and these reductions will continue for 9 more years as one source of funding for the expansion of the Medicaid program that I described for you, as well as tax credits that are available to individuals and businesses to purchase coverage under the insurance exchanges. But in addition to that, in our state, insurance companies that do business in our state, medical device manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies, they're all subject to a 2% excise tax, all to create funds to allow the federal government to fund the Medicaid expansion moving forward. And should our state elect not to expand the program, then what's going to happen is those payment cuts from hospitals in Tennessee, as well as those tax dollars that are generated from our employers here in Tennessee, are going to leave our state and go to other states that do choose to expand the Medicaid program. And the third point I would make with you is just the economic impact of this. The cost for the first 5 years of this program to expand it, the cost to the state of Tennessee, and this cost would be made up of, actually the state of Tennessee, the Medicaid program is an insurance company and has to pay that 2% excise tax. Excuse me. So part of the number I'm getting ready to share with you would be the tax that the state's going to have to pay the federal government, but the rest of it would be the state's portion of the coverage for the expansion of the program. That's estimated to be $200 million for the first 5 years, but in turn, the state would draw down $6.4 billion over that same period from the federal government. So you can see the economic impact as those dollars trickle down through the economy. But here today representing the hospital, the important takeaway for you is our hospital, as well as others, have already committed to funding this program, and if we don't expand the coverage, the Medicaid eligibility, we will be funding that expansion, but we will not enjoy the benefit of the additional payment for the uninsured. So I'd appreciate your consideration and ask for your support. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Arnold, any comments or questions from council?
Mr. Arnold, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Arnold, you're asking the members of the council to support the Medicaid expansion program
That's
for the
correct.
General
Yes.
Assembly, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Move to approve.
We have a
Second.
motion for approval.
Mayor, before we vote, I want to make for the record that I'm going to abstain from the vote as to prevent a possible conflict of interest, but encourage my fellow council members to support this resolution.
I had a question, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Arnold, I guess politics aside and the dollars aside, will this expansion of Medicaid do exactly what the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare had set out to do initially, which is to insure poor people and to insure more people?
Yes, sir, I believe that it will. Actually, here in Tennessee, we have our TennCare program in this state is something that we can be proud of. It's very effectively run and managed when compared to other states. The growth and the utilization and cost of our TennCare program here in Tennessee is about half of what it is in other states. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, when uninsured members in people in our community have access to care, the outcomes and the cost are both improved. So I believe that it would.
Mm-hmm. And my last question is, are other hospitals in the state of Tennessee aligned with you on this issue?
Yes, sir, they are. The Tennessee Hospital Association, which includes not-for-profits as well as for-profit hospitals, are in favor, has endorsed expansion of the Medicaid program. The Hospital Alliance of Tennessee, which is the not-for-profit advocacy group, frankly, every hospital in the state of Tennessee that I'm aware of, most chambers of commerce across the state are in favor of this.
And lastly, just a comment, if there are any other ways that me personally as a councilman can help advance this, please let us know.
Okay. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Any other questions or comments from
Yeah,
council?
one question. How will you determine what service to eliminate? How will y'all determine that? Or what service might be eliminated if you have to?
If we are forced to eliminate services?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, Councilman Dodd. Of course, as a public, not-for-profit healthcare system, we're obligated to take care of everybody regardless of their ability to pay. There are certain core services that are recognized to be the responsibility of a hospital. Fortunately, here in our community, we have been able to, I guess, expand the scope of our services a little bit to move beyond what might be traditional core services of hospitals. And certainly we would do all that we can to make sure that we can continue to fill our public not-for-profit mission. I might share with the council, we're quite proud. We're the low-cost hospital in the state of Tennessee, case mix adjusted for the acuity of patients. We're also the low-charge hospital. So unfortunately, we're already pretty efficient. We don't have a lot of places to go to ensure our financial sustainability. Our funding from reductions in our Medicare payment beginning in 2012, continuing to 2022 as part of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act is about $50 million over that period of time. So we would have some real challenges and some tough choices to make. So.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council? Council elects to approve the resolution. The signed copy will be forwarded not only to our local delegation, but each and every member of the General Assembly and also the governor's office upon approval. Okay, we have a motion, a second. Council, please vote.
And the motion passes with 8 members in favor and 1 abstaining.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bobby. Item 5, the new business, consideration of resolution to approve a lease between the City of Jackson, the State of Tennessee, for the purpose of establishing a shared parking lot. Stan?
Place you good morning. And I'll place you a map up there that kind of shows the location generally of what we're talking about. The State of Tennessee approached the City of Jackson about providing some additional parking for their state employees at the Lowell Thomas State Office Building. And this was an area that they knew was available, and it worked in conjunction to its location because if you see to the west here, that is the Lowell Thomas State Office Building and the parking that they have now. This is their current driveway cut that goes into that parking, which lines up with the driveway that we have across that services the police department, which is the building you see to the north here. The little blue box is the area that we're talking about. It could be adjusted a little bit in either direction, but that's generally where we're talking about. We will take the existing parking that we have, which you see in the box that's already serving the police department. It's in somewhat a poor condition and kind of could be reworked to get more efficiency out of it, and it will be reconstructed and adjacent with this parking to provide a new parking lot that will serve the police department as well as the state office building. There will also be agreements that the City of Jackson will be able to use this parking in the evenings for events that they might have. Also, some of the terms of the lease you have in the resolution, it's a 20-year lease. Basically, the state would be leasing our property for $1, but they would bear all cost of construction with this parking lot. We would not bear any of those costs, but we would share in the benefits of having it. We would come up with a concept. They would buy into that concept for the layout. Then we would proceed with design. Once we had design, we will bid that out. We will get a contractor. We will construct that parking lot. Once we construct it, then the state will take over responsibility. They will be responsible for all maintenance going forward. And should we see a need at some point in the future to utilize that property in association with some expansion or use that we have, all we have to do is give a 6-month notice to the state, and then the lease can be terminated. That's about it all in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
I have a question.
Yes,
How many parking spots are we looking at adding with this parking lot?
we were roughly figuring this area would generate about 150 parking spaces.
Yes, the only concern I had, Stan, was the current police department is allowed to use some of those spaces, and it wasn't specified in here the number of spaces that would be used. My concern is that the state employees will come over there and fill that parking lot up, and there'll be no place for people going to the police department to
Yeah.
park.
As a part of the design, the parking spaces that are associated, that are closest to the police department, that they're utilizing now, will be designated for the police department. So these will not just be open spaces, they will be designated for police department use only.
So will it just be that first row that's already there that's designated? Won't be any further?
That's
parking?
correct. You know, we're basically gonna try to give an equivalent to what they have now, and those will be designated for police department use.
Move for approval?
Have a motion for approval,
Mr.
second.
Chairman,
Discussion. Go ahead,
as
Councilman.
a employee of the state of Tennessee, I will be abstaining from this vote.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Council, please vote.
Motion passes with 8 members in favor, 1 abstaining.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Stan. Remove item 6 from the agenda. We'll go to item 7, and that's consideration of the annual audit presentation by Alexander Thompson Arnold, PLLC, on the city's finances for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2012. And we have Mr. Mike Hewitt present.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, council.
Good morning.
According to the Jackson Sun today, this morning, I was the highlight of this meeting. That's kind of got me worried a little bit. You've got, hopefully in front of you, and have had time to look at, if you have any questions, a copy of our audit report from June 30, 2012. What I will do is go through and cover some of the highlights and then entertain any questions that you might have. If you will look on page 9, this is our audit, the actual audit report. The rest of this is all actually your financial statements, with just exception of a couple of pages. This is what we provide. It's on pages 9 and 10, and the key paragraph that you want to focus in on is the third paragraph that starts in our opinion. In our opinion, based on our audit and the report of the other auditor, the financial statements referred to previously present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, business type activities, discretely presented component units, each major fund, and aggregate remaining fund information, and so on and so forth. Anyway, the essential meaning of that paragraph is that the financial statements are a fair representation of the financial condition of the city of Jackson and the results of operations for last year. And you'll notice in there a reference to another auditor. We audit all aspects of the city with the exception of Jackson Transit Authority. That is audited by another accounting firm. And we incorporate that into the city's audit, and in doing so, we rely on their opinion on those financial statements for the Jackson Transit Authority. Okay, if you'll go to, flip over a couple of pages, page 11. I'm not going to go through this, but I will point out pages 11 through 18 are the management discussion and analysis, which is actually drafted by the city finance director. This is sort of a plain English discussion of the financial statements in probably a little bit more readable format than just columns of numbers, which you may want to look at. If you go over to page 19, okay, this is the statement of net assets, and I'm very quickly going to tell you what's encompassed in all of these various columns here. The governmental activities column, that encompasses the general fund, debt service fund, capital outlay fund, and all the other governmental funds that the city operates, as well as the funds of the community development department. The business type activities column, that covers your solid waste disposal, Jackson Transit Authority, Sportsplex,
and the Community Development Relending Fund, the revolving loan fund for community development. JEA, of course, that's self-explanatory, and the reason JEA is in your financial statements, as some of you all may remember, a good while back, JEA was, there was some private act put through the legislature that created a separate entity called Jackson Energy Authority that was not really in any way tied to the city of Jackson, except you all appoint their board members. And shortly thereafter, in fact, I think it was the very next year after that was done, the city guaranteed some debt for Jackson Energy Authority. And that's what pulls Jackson Energy Authority into the city's financial statements, is that guarantee of some of their debt.
So, Mike,
Yes.
once we get past that and don't guarantee their debt anymore, then will they drop off the financial statements?
They will drop off. That is the one thing that pulls them in as a part of the city. And the Jackson Community Redevelopment Agency, that is also independent, except it does have economic dependency on the city of Jackson. And that's why that's considered a component unit of the city. Okay. This statement of net assets, and we've got two separate financial presentations actually in this audit, in the financial statements. One is full accrual-based financial statements, which is if you're in private business, that's what you're used to seeing. It's got all of your assets and liabilities, and it's on the full accrual basis. And then the other set of financial statements that's encompassed in here are the fund financial statements, which is what you all are probably used to seeing on your monthly reports that you get. The full accrual statements, which is what we're looking at now, the biggest difference between those and what you are used to looking at is these include all of your infrastructure. Normally, in the fund financial statements that you look at, once a city builds a street, builds a parking lot, builds a bridge, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. It's not out of mind because the Public Works Department has to maintain it, but once you've bought that asset, you've invested in it, it's not something you really keep up with anymore. In the full accrual presentation of financial statements, those assets are capitalized on your books, and you do record depreciation on those, just as a commercial business would. If you look down at the bottom, you'll see the total assets from the governmental activities is $188 million. That number kind of scares people sometimes. When we talk about that, they sit up and take notice and say, we don't have that much money. Well, you don't. $125 million of that is capital assets. It's your infrastructure and your fixed assets that you own. If you look up on about the fourth line down, you'll see taxes receivable, $30.5 million. Your actual taxes receivable, previous year taxes that were assessed for years 2011 and previous, the receivable was actually about $2.5 million. The other $28 million is recorded as a receivable because a quirk of Tennessee law, and when the levy for taxes actually attaches to the property. And we don't agree with it, but we don't make the rules, unfortunately. That $30 million includes $28 million, which was the 2012 taxes that the city actually didn't collect until this fiscal year. So that's, when you subtract that $28 million out and $125 million in capital assets, then that kind of leaves you with the resources that you have available. Okay, if you'll go to page 21. This is the last section of the statement of net assets, the net assets section, or to put it in commercial terminology, your net worth. For the governmental activities, that's $82 million. For the business type activities, that's $11.9 million. And JEA is $332 million. And the Jackson Community Redevelopment Agency is $3.8 million. Okay, if you'll go over to page 22. Not going to spend too much time on this, but it is a kind of a confusing presentation. So I want to explain briefly where all these numbers come from. This is a statement of activities, or your income statement, if you want to use that term, on the full accrual basis for the city. And the format is a little bit confusing. Those of you who are in commercial business, you're used to seeing income first and then expenses second. And then underneath that would be net income. In this presentation, the expenses are listed first and then the income comes after that. The first column there breaks down the various the expenses in the various areas of service that the city has. And this does include depreciation on your capital assets. The next three columns are revenues directly associated with those services. Either the services generate revenue or you get grants to underwrite the services. So the fifth column then, where you see some bracketed numbers, that's the actual net cost of providing that service after the revenues that are directly associated with it. And that's the cost that's underwritten by your general tax revenues. And so you'll see for the governmental activities, the net cost, so to speak, of the governmental activities is $61 million, and that's what's underwritten by the general revenues which appear underneath that. Okay, if you look down on about the fifth line up, the changes in net assets, that's the decrease in net assets or the net income or loss for the year, so to speak. For the governmental activities, that decreased by $5.4 million. Business type activities, $493,000. Okay. If y'all have any questions about this as we're going along, feel free to jump in. That may be an easier way to do this. If you go to page 23, we're going to get in now to what you are normally used to looking at. This other stuff, the full accrual statements that we've been going through the last couple of minutes, I mean, you essentially see those once a year as a part of your year-end audit report. The fund financial statements that we're getting ready to talk about, that's what you see on a month-to-month basis. This may be a little more consolidated than what you see, but it is the same basis of accounting that you're used to looking at. These are the balance sheets for the governmental funds. You have three what are called major funds: the general fund, the debt service fund, and the capital outlay fund. And then your other governmental funds, or the non-major funds, encompass all the other funds, governmental funds of the city. I want to focus in primarily on your fund balance. I know I do enough of this to know that that's what city councils usually like to look at. You can't do much about what you've already spent, but what you can look at is what you got left over. The general fund has a fund balance at the end of the year of $22.9 million. The debt service fund has a fund balance of $5.5 million. The capital outlay fund actually had a deficit of $357,000. And all the other funds had other governmental funds had a fund balance of $545,000. And of that fund balance, some of it is restricted in various shapes, forms, and fashions. You'll see the various restrictions listed there. The restricted and committed fund balances, the restricted fund balances are generally restricted from outside sources, either state law, grants that you've gotten, people outside the city that have given you money that have attached some restriction to it. The committed, that is the restriction on that arises from the restriction that the city puts on the debt service funds when it appropriates a portion of the tax levy every year for debt service. The assigned fund balances, you'll see about 7 or 8 of them listed there. Those are internal. Those are things that you all have done internally to say this is what we're planning on using this portion of our fund balance for. Those can always be changed. You're not committed to, well, that's not a good term to use since we have committed fund balance. You're not tied into spending that fund balance on those items. You can't change that. And then the unassigned fund balance in the general fund is, which is essentially the fund balance that you've not said we're going to use for any purpose, is $18.3 million. Okay, if you go over to page 25, this is a somewhat summarized statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for your governmental funds. And I want to explain one thing. It's a somewhat of a quirk in the accounting principles. You all are required to have a solid waste collection fund by state law. When some accounting principles changed 2 years ago, the solid waste collection fund no longer qualifies from a technical standpoint to be a special revenue fund. And the reason for that is because while you all levy a fee for the collection of solid waste, you don't restrict that fee to collection of solid waste. It can be used for other things. And under the accounting principles, in order for the solid waste collection fund to be a separate special revenue fund, that fee for solid waste collection has to be restricted to solid waste. So that kind of puts you in a conundrum because you have a fund that generally accepted accounting principles says cannot be a special revenue fund, yet there's a state law that says you have to account for this activity in a special revenue fund. The state is still struggling with what to do about that. Hopefully they'll correct that this year. In an attempt to try to provide some sort of easy to understand, I'm not sure it's easy to understand, but it's the best that the people that make the rules up in Norwalk, Connecticut for governmental accounting could come up with. That's the special revenue fund for solid waste collection in this financial statement here is included in the general fund because it really is not a special revenue fund from an accounting standpoint. So the numbers you'll see for the special revenue fund in this column on page 25 are not going to agree exactly with the numbers that you would see on your internal financial statements for the general fund. And that's the reason why. I don't know if any of you all would want to spend the time to try to compare all this, but if you do, you'll notice that the numbers don't exactly agree. And that's why, because the general fund on this presentation has actually got the solid waste collection fund rolled into it. Okay. The general fund and solid waste collection fund in this instance here operated at a deficit for the year of $2.4 million. You further had transfers out, net transfers out of $2.5 million for a net change in fund balance of $4.9 million. The debt service fund, the net change in fund balance was $4.8 million increase. And that, your debt service fund, given the way that you all borrow money and repay it, that is not unusual to see that kind of a increase in it. The capital projects fund had a decrease in fund balance of $301,000 and all the other governmental funds of $1.47 million. Okay. If the transfers down there, the other financing sources and uses, the operating transfers in and out, there is some detail back on page 56 if you want to look and see which funds those transfers in and out of actually went to and from. If you would go over now to page 29. This is a statement of revenues and expenses and changes in net assets for the proprietary funds, which is essentially your business type activities, the solid waste disposal fund, the landfill fund, the Jackson Transit Authority, and the Sportsplex, as well as the community development relending revolving loan fund. The solid waste disposal operated at a loss of $99,000 for the year. Transit Authority at a net loss after the city's transfer in of $816,000. The Sportsplex had a positive change in net assets or income for $338,000, and the community development relending revolving loan fund had a surplus of $83,000. Okay, if you go to page 34, this is truly now just the general fund. This is what you used to see when you see your general fund. This does not have the solid waste collection fund dumped into it as that last presentation did. And this has also got comparisons to your budget for last year, the original budget plus the final budget at the end of the year. Your total revenues were $500,000 below budget. That was in four main areas. You can see there they had a couple areas that were over and a couple areas that were under. And on a $61 million revenue budget, getting within $500,000 is commendable. I think that speaks well to your budgetary process. The expenditures, you were $962,000 under what you had budgeted as far as what you spent last year. Okay. That has kind of there's more detail. I'm not going to go into it, but if you'll, beginning on the next page, all the way back through page 44, there's more detail of what's in the general fund budgetary statement if you're interested in looking at it. You go back now to page 91. This is not something we normally point out to you. This schedule here is on 91 through 94. This is a summary of the expenditures of federal awards. The federal money that you got, both direct from the federal government and also money that had federal origins but was passed through somebody else, most of the time the state of Tennessee. If you'll flip over to the page 94, and this is something that we are pointing out now when we make presentations of audit reports, given what's going on in Washington and the uncertainty that's evolved. If you look down in the column that says expenditures, it's the third column from the right. The total expenditures of federal funds in the year ended June 30, 2012 was just under $6 million. That's about 6.5% of your budget. Now, we've got some clients that it's a lot more than 6.5% of your budget, but we also have some that it's less than 6.5%. And that's not a commentary on anything, any politics or anything. That's just an observation of what you get on an annual basis from the federal government. If you will look, and I believe in the email that Al LaFoon sent you, he pointed out one thing that's actually right above that line. The FEMA funds outstanding, the last column on the right is what is owed to the city at June 30, 2012. You have $789,000 of uncollected money from FEMA. There's two FEMA claims, two disasters that this relates to that you're still in negotiations with FEMA to try to recover some of that. Okay, if you will go now to page, we're going to jump around just a little bit to page 110. One of the things that we're obligated to do is we do what's called a single audit over your federal funds. We have to do a separate compliance audit on that $6 million of federal funds that you get to make sure that the city has complied with all the various rules and regulations that the federal government has. Now, that's not exhaustive. I mean, we don't get down, if you've ever read a federal grant, they have 2 paragraphs where they give you the money, and then they have 20 pages of rules you got to follow. And we don't audit all 20 pages of rules because some of them just aren't that significant, but there are several primary or main areas of compliance that we focus in on. And as a part of the audit, we do have to test compliance with all of those various federal regulations. And it's, I'm pleased to say, and we've got a two-page report on this, that we found no material instances of noncompliance. So you're to be commended for that. If you'll look on page 114, this is a follow-up on a prior year finding. The year before, we did have a finding on your federal grant compliance, and that was dealt with the internal controls on your FEMA grants. And there, some of the negotiations you have to do with FEMA now to try to recover some money was due to some controls that were not in place at the time that you had a disaster, and that has been corrected. There are systems in place now to make sure that that does not happen again. Okay, now I'm going to flip back. If you would go to page 108. This is the third and final report in here that actually comes from us. This is our report on internal control and compliance. One of the things, we're obligated to comment and look at your internal controls over financial reporting and on any compliance issues that might have a material impact on your financial statements. We do have one finding in this regard. If you look on page 109, that we do have a deficiency that we, in our opinion, is a material weakness. And if you'll go to page 113, we've got the details of that finding there. In the process of testing your court docket, we took a fairly small sample, some citations. There was what we routinely do if we find a voided citation, is we will look and see if we can account for all the, excuse me, if we can account for all the copies of that voided citation, just to be sure they're being retained and properly accounted for. And on that one we couldn't find, it just wasn't available. What we were told was the voided citations were not kept. So based on that, a larger sample was looked at of 881 citations. Of those, there was 33 that we couldn't account for. Probably they were voided, but since voided citations were not kept, there was no way to determine what happened to those. Based on that, we've just got a recommendation that you get a better system in place for accounting for all of the citations that are issued as they filter their way through the system. The process, it's more detailed than this, but essentially, when a citation is issued by the police department, it goes to the city court, and it goes through the city court, and it's disposed of, either dismissed, or the judge has whatever his disposition of it is. And the police department and the city court clerk responded to this, and the response down there was what was drafted by them. We have looked at this, and now we've not tested this because they made this change in this fiscal year. But the system that they've got here should prevent this from happening again. I mean, they have got a very detailed way now of tracking citations as they flow through the system to make sure they're accounted for. So we don't expect that to recur again. Okay, that is it for the main part of the audit report. We gave you a separate letter, which we call a management letter, that's got minor issues in it that they're just things we feel like we need to bring to your attention, and not necessarily things that we feel like are significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, just things that we want to point out to you. And this is in a separate letter. It's not bound as a copy of the audit, or as part of the audit report. The first item there, we got 3 comments. The city has a decentralized cash collection process. Most of the cash that's collected comes in to the recorder's office here in City Hall, but there are places where cash is collected, like at all the various recreation facilities around town. So there are some decentralized places that cash is collected. That is brought here and accounted for in the recorder's office. When you have so many places that collect cash, it's almost impossible not to have a few minor things that come up sometimes. We did notice at the NED that were instances of receipts being issued out of sequence. There was just a couple instances of those. At one of the sports, at the T.R. White Sportsplex, there was 2 carbon copies of receipts that had been altered. And a lot of times there's probably innocent reasons why these things happen. This is not necessarily a criticism of anybody involved in these. It's just, we're just pointing out you need to avoid these activities. Then the other thing, and I think we comment on this every day, every year, the state law requires that you all deposit all your money in 3 days. And in the decentralized environment that you have, that is almost impossible to comply with 100% of the time. It's just one of those things that you have to live with, unfortunately. You do a good job 99.99% of the time of getting all the money deposited. It's the rare instance that we see that you do have some that goes over. And this is better than it has been in the past. But we have this comment at other places that don't have nearly as complex of a receipt system as the city of Jackson has. So it's just one of those things you almost can't avoid. Okay, the second item there is actual expenditures exceeding appropriations. There was 3 or 4, well, actually 5 funds where you actually exceeded your appropriations. Sometimes this is because of year-end adjustments. It's hard to get budget amendments actually run through your system, get all these taken care of. Again, that's one of those things that sometimes crops up. Normally, you all do a very good job of this. In fact, I would compliment your finance department staff. They do a much better job than most of our clients on budget amendments. You all amend your budget as you go through the year, as you see needs to amend your budget. I've got a lot of clients that their budgetary amendment process consists of last-minute cleaning up in June, where they essentially pass a budget amendment to cover all the sins of the past year. And y'all don't do that. For the most part, you amend your budget as you see the need to through the year, which is what you're supposed to do. Okay, the third item there on the community development, as you all are aware, the Jackson Housing Authority actually operates your community development department for you. It's staffed with their employees, and as I told, remind them every now and then, you're employed by the Jackson Housing Authority, you work for the city of Jackson. This is a contractual arrangement that you all have had for some time with the Housing Authority to operate the community development program for you. In the process of doing that, the Housing Authority actually loans money to the city for working capital to underwrite some of the operations of the 4 funds that comprise the community development activities of the city. And then they get repaid when you draw community development funds down from the state and the federal government. The reconciliation of what was due between the Jackson Housing Authority and the city was not up to date. That has been taken care of. Winston Henning and Dave Ralston and I had a meeting with the young man who's now the chief accountant for the Housing Authority. And he's a really nice guy. He's very intense, but he's a really nice guy. And that's a compliment. I was impressed by him. And I'm convinced that will no longer be the case. I think he's got a handle on that now. In fact, I think he had a handle on it before I talked to him. And that is all the comments I've got. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any comments or questions from council as to the?
I've got a couple of questions. You mentioned that we had a deficit, I believe you said $357,000 on capital outlay. Would that have anything at all to do with the fact that we haven't been able to recoup the FEMA money?
Uh,
I can't answer that. No, we just haven't transferred money from debt service to the capital fund, in a timely manner.
Oh, okay.
The-
That's where
Okay.
they get their source of funds.
Your capital outlay fund, you have to really kind of understand how that works. Y'all borrow money, and then sometimes it takes you 2 years and you spend it. So so that fund can go like this. It just kind of depends on what the cycle, where you are in the cycle of borrowing money and spending money. So,
And the other thing, am I correct that the only serious citation there we had was the police department?
Yes.
All other departments were fine. And how does that compare with last year's? It sounds like a good audit to me.
it is. It's, of course, I would love to come here and say we have no findings. And on occasion, I think we've done that. You had one material weakness last year, which is what was on page 114. And one of the things we're obligated to do is when we have findings in an audit report, we're obligated to follow up and see if those have been corrected in the next year. And you all do have a system in place to correct that. And based on what we've told has been changed, and I'm sure has been changed, we'll have the same comment on the finding on page 113 next year, that it has been addressed and corrected.
Thank you.
Mayor, I got a couple questions.
Go ahead.
The bottom line I'm looking on page 34, on the general fund statement of revenues and expenditures, is that the revenues or expenditures, excess revenues were 4.6 million, almost $4.7 million.
Yes.
Okay. The other two questions I had is, one is on the FEMA receivable that you mentioned. Does the audit do anything to make a determination whether they think we're gonna collect that? I mean, normally we won't put a receivable on the books unless we feel like we're gonna collect it. Are we still?
Well, you all are working on that. And unfortunately, as everyone's aware, FEMA is a federal agency that is stretched to the limit. And every time we have a new disaster, their attention to going and cleaning up all of their old business wanes a little bit.
Okay. But y'all don't make a prediction as whether we'll collect that or not?
I quit trying to do that about 15 years ago because it kind of depends on their mood and the time of day when they show up down here to look at what you've done. It is in deferred revenue. If you've not collected it by August 31st, it actually is on the balance sheet as a receivable, but it's also in a liability as deferred revenue. So it's not actually, that collection is not actually in your statement of revenues and expenditures.
One thing, Randy, I would like to point out that $789,000, that is what FEMA has recognized in our claims. We have got them to reopen Oman Arena, which is like 2.6 million, and we're trying to get them to reopen Heron Grove Bridge, which is 0.4. So we're really going after $3 million more than this 789,000. That's what is in jeopardy, and Mike in no way would want to put a probability on that. There's pretty high probability on this 789.
The 800,000 that you all are due is, as Al said, FEMA they haven't put their final stamp of approval on it, but it's what they've recognized. It's the projects that they've approved. And like I said, FEMA, it's not uncommon to see them finally paying off on a FEMA grant, sometimes 2, 3, 4 years afterwards. It just takes a long time for them to work through their system.
The last question I have is on the capital outlay fund. And I noticed in there that and I guess we've done for several years, is included items that aren't city expenditures in the capital outlay fund, such as the airport authority, the emergency management. Is that normal to put in a capital outlay fund for a city, items that don't actually belong to the city or pertain to the city?
Somebody told me that y'all would ask that question. I won't say it's normal. It's not. I checked to see if there's anything that said you couldn't do that, and there's nothing I can find that says you can't do that. If you're going to finance that with the issuance of debt, in the capital outlay fund, it seems like the logical place to put that, as opposed to putting those grants to other organizations such as the Airport Authority.
I just want to make sure we're okay, because
In
that's
the
where our
general
money
fund.
should go, is, appropriation to other agencies.
Right.
Because the other appropriation we give, we got no idea where they're going to spend that. They could be spending that on capital outlay items.
Right. And on the airport, for, specifically, when you give them money to buy real estate with it, you're actually owning the real estate.
Yeah, I
That
understood
does
what
come
the real
back to
estate
you.
was, but this was not a real estate item, is what brought it to my attention.
Right.
So,
No, to answer your question, that's permissible.
okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council or comment? Okay, Mr. Hunt, thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate you coming.
I make one other comment. I appreciated Billy's comments about the town of Denmark. We used to actually audit the town of Denmark back when Robert Hardy was mayor. And at that time, it had the distinction before they surrendered their charter of being the smallest incorporated municipality in the state of Tennessee.
And they were not broke either.
Okay, we removed item 8 on new business until further consideration. Item 9 is approval of contract for candy and ice cream to be sold with concessions at the West Tennessee Healthcare Sportsplex.
As you know, the Sportsplex is gearing up for another year, and they ask us to take bids on candy, ice cream, and food. And the first bid you have before you is for the candy and ice cream. And we would recommend that you award this to Charles C. Parks Company out of Gallatin. They were the only complete bid that we received.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 10 is approval of contract for various types of food to be sold as concessions at the West Tennessee Healthcare Sportsplex.
2 bids were received on this one, and Cisco was the lowest and best bid received, and we would ask you to approve the contract to Cisco, and this one and the previous one need to be based upon unit pricing.
Move the adoption based upon unit prices.
Second.
I have a motion and a second discussion from council. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 11 is approval of contract for on-call pavement management and restoration.
You have before you the attached spreadsheet that lists all the prices from the 2 companies that received, we received bids for. It's Pavement Restorations and Cantrell Construction, and it is the recommendation of the Engineering and Purchasing Departments to award this to Pavement Restorations, being the lowest and best bid received.
Move for approval.
Second.
Approval, second discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 12 is board appointments. The West Tennessee Healthcare Board, appointment of Vicki Birch, who is replacing Sammy Arnold. Is there a motion?
I make it.
Second.
Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
To the Net Advisory Board, which we just approved their creation and their bylaws, appointments of Carla Bernsgasser, Hilda Little for 1-year term, Gwen Anthony, Margaret Morrison, and Terry Wallace for 2-year term, and Lyda K. Faree, Bob Lindsay, and Glenda Baker for a 3-year term.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion made, second discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Also, the Historic Zoning Commission, reappointments of Herb Slack and Bruce Doris.
So moved.
Motion made, second discussion. Council, please vote.
And the motion passes with 8 in favor, 1 abstaining.
Item 13, the budget amendments. Bell?
Good morning. We have 4 budget amendments this morning. The first one is the Community Development Budget Amendment to increase the Community Development Block Grant by $239,927. And Mr. Ralston is here. There was a resolution presented to you about this, if you have any questions.
Move the approval. Second.
Motion and second discussion from council. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Okay, the second amendment that we have this morning affects the drug fund, requesting $21,875 to purchase capital items for the CompStat room for GIS mapping software and a projector, and this money will come from the drug fund money.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion, council. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
The third amendment that we have this morning reflects the Sportsplex Fund. Increase capital funding for the Sportsplex by $38,990 to purchase backstop net extensions for 7 fields due to safety concerns voiced by people.
So moved.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
And the last amendment that we have this morning is to increase grants and donations with $20,000 for the SWHRA summer program. This was omitted in the original FY13 budget, and $77,200 to be given to the Carnegie Building for HVAC. No increase in revenue. This will be transferred for the excess that was budgeted in the difference between revenue and expenses that we already had.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bell. Item 14 is consideration of invoices over 10,000.
So moved.
Have a motion, second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
There being no further business, meeting is adjourned.
Something to say about that.